We all know that one of the coolest parts about discovering your human design is really getting so much clarity and validation as to your true nature and who you're always meant to be. But equally as important and something that can get missed often is actually the gift and the power in knowing who you're not. The gift and the power in having the contrast to know, actually, this truly is me because all this stuff over here is not me. And that is exactly what we're going to get into in episode 3 of the series, Your Future Depends on Knowing Who You Are. We are back again with Katie Irvin from Sort of Spiritual. And without any further ado, let's get into the conversation. Welcome back to Your Future Depends on Knowing Who You Are. This is episode 3 of this series. I'm so excited. And if you missed it, in the first episode, we got into what the fuck is human design and we defined it. And we had a very long conversation about how potent the system is. We talked about our origin stories. And then in the last episode, we got really deep into the difference of knowing your human design and actually living it. Because one of the things that happens with this stuff is you got to learn it, right? You got to intellectually get into it, as we talked about extensively in the last episode. But then we can sort of get trapped in that and just get trapped in loving how much validation we're getting from the system, wanting to learn more. And there's certain, our line one friends, we'd love to learn. It's all good. But there is a remarkable difference in just knowing it and actually living it. There's so much alignment waiting for you on the other side, even if it can be scary, which we talked about.
Yeah.
And now we're here and we've talked about knowing yourself, living as yourself. And now we're going to talk about how important it is to know who you're not, which is something that Katie and I are really passionate about. And it feels really important to have the contrast of not just knowing who you are, but also knowing what isn't you and what feels like not you. And so with that being said, let's get into this conversation that you and I both love so much. How do you want to begin?
Yeah. So I think there's two ways that we can look at this today. One is who you're not, in the sense of learning about the aspects that you don't have in your design that other people might have. And then also the not self, which is a human design term. Human design sometimes kind of has these funny terms, and not self is one of those. And so I think that can also be really helpful guidance, because it provides you these bumpers as you go through life. Like when I was 5, I was so cool. I was in a little bowling league for 5-year-olds. And because obviously 5-year-olds are not good at bowling, or at least I wasn't, they have bumpers in the gutters so that your ball can't actually go into the gutter, right? And so that's kind of how I see these not self themes, which we're going to get into more so for the centers, which again, at first when I was learning this stuff, I was like, this is so boring, who cares? And then which I do a lot. And then
I can
I
attest to that.
really see, and then I really see the significance of it. And it's like, oh, wow, this is so powerful. So hopefully I can convey some of that power to you today about these not self themes, which on their own don't seem very interesting or sexy. But I think having these kind of bumpers or things that help you just stay on your path in life, it's so incredible. But I think there's so many things I could talk about of knowing who I'm not. But I'm curious what comes to mind for you, Maria, of what are some of these moments that stand out for you when you realize oh, that isn't me. And it feels, to me anyways, it feels so freeing.
Yeah, definitely. I will share that. And I also want to talk about what I was thinking of before you shared that, which is I often get to witness my clients have this experience when I'm sharing with them what their design is. Something that if you guys ever get into reading charts, or even before reading charts, you start talking to people. I don't know if this happened to you, Katie, but you start talking to people about human design, and maybe you pull up their chart and you tell them oh, you're a generator in this. People will often say something like, well, isn't everybody like that? Because it's just what they know. And so it's like being like a fish in water. So you think that, oh, because I'm like this, everybody else must be like this too. It's like a line two thing that you and I share. It's like, oh, if it's easy for me, then it must be easy for everyone else too. We sort of assume that our reality is everyone's reality, or at least that it's shared. And so I have this experience often with clients where I will share what their design is. We'll get into their strategy, etc. For an example, we talked a lot about our emotional authority, right, in the previous episode, and how that's an authority that we need to wait out to see. And so I'll share with, say, a sacral authority client. I'm like, by the way, other people actually have to wait and they have to feel into their emotions. And they don't have that.
Don't get these super clear answers.
Exactly. Or vice versa. I'll share with an emotional authority client or a different type of longer, needing more time kind of authority. Hey, other people like splenic and sacral authority, they just know right away. And that's not you, but this other thing exists. And that for people is so helpful, because they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I am not like that. I do need to wait. Or you're right, I don't need to wait. I actually know the thing. So that's like a just because I run into that, like, isn't everyone like this? That's a thing that I
Yeah.
that I feel often. Yeah. Do you get clients like that, or have you heard that from people that you've shared their designs with?
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like I tend to attract a lot of similar people, especially when it comes to individuality. Like I get a lot of people that are really here to be unique, to be themselves, to empower others through their individuality and their uniqueness. And actually just on a call this past week with my HD school students, we were looking at a chart that was not someone in the course, which is not surprising because I don't tend to attract these people, that was super collective, where it's like they're really like
Mm,
they had probably half of the logic circuit, which is a lot. So they have a lot of this logical energy, this collective energy. And I could really see how it could play out for what this person was doing in their life. But it was such a contrast to the previous chart we looked at from another student, where you're here to be so unique, to be so weird, to be so different, to like express
yeah,
that and to give us all permission to be ourselves in that way. Where it's like this other person, like you can see in the chart, this is so different. This person is really not
totally.
here to care about their own individuality and express their own individuality. And even in my own self, to see the contrast of my circuitry, so that's another aspect of design. I have one individual channel and I have one tribal channel. And I feel like they used to kind of like war with each other because this one
Mm,
aspect of me is like, express yourself, be free, little butterfly, you know?
yeah,
And the
yeah.
other one is like, what are you doing? This is a waste of time. This is a waste of money. This is a waste of
Mm,
resources. This is so frivolous, you know? And so I think seeing that when I see other people's charts that are not like mine or can show clients, especially on group calls, which like I love doing with my students, because you can see on the call of like, oh yeah, this person and I are really similar. Or it's like, oh, this person and I are so different, right?
yeah,
And I feel like that's just one of those areas that human design, again, gives you, or at least gave me more permission to be myself because I could see that, like, listen, I was a heavily conditioned person. Okay. I was very,
yeah.
very out of alignment. And so I had so many ideas of how I should be, how is like the correct way to be, like all this good girl conditioning, whatever. And so sometimes it was hard for me to believe that the way that my design was really the truth. It's like, well, maybe this is just some sort of wishful thinking. Maybe this is just what I wanted to
Yeah,
say. So I'm
right.
believing this or I'm interpreting this in a way because it's like, this is what I would prefer. But then when I started doing all these readings for other people, it's like, well, no, that's actually the truth for me. And it's quite different compared to a lot of other people. So I feel like that
Totally.
also was such a space of freedom for me to lean into.
100%. And especially the thing that keeps coming to mind right now is the tagline of human design, the science of differentiation.
Yeah.
And when you start to get that contrast, those contrasting designs of different people, you start to see, like, okay, it's actually safe for me to be me because other people get to be them. And it's all in this cosmic
Yeah.
order, which is something that we talked about in the last episode, too. Everyone is here for a purpose. We're all the puzzle pieces that we talked about in the first episode. Like, everyone here has a part to play. And so it's very safe to be you. And knowing who you are is very helpful. And also knowing who you're not is very helpful. So you can like come up against those bumpers. And so to answer the first question you asked me, like, what were some of those moments for me? I think to your point, actually, which I'm surprised to think, I guess I never put this together before, but actually the centers, yeah, were really helpful for me to like know
Mm-hmm.
what things I have defined and not, and how that plays out in my life. So in my design, I have 5 centers defined, 4 undefined. The undefined ones are the ego center, the G center, the Ajna center, and the head center. And I could speak about how all of those were really validating, but let's just talk about, for example, the G center. It was extremely helpful for me to be validated in the fact that it's okay for my identity to be quite fluid and at times
Yeah.
feel maybe a little lost, maybe like I don't know who I am today, or I don't know necessarily where I'm going. And to see that there are people that are so sure. And I know these people, these people are my mom, these people are one of my closest friends. I have a lot of defined G center people in my life. And the question of identity is truly not a question that they struggle with. It's not really
Mm-hmm.
a thing that they've ever felt. You know, one of my friends who has a defined G center, she uses this language often, which is like, well, that's just a me thing, or like, that's very me, or da 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 da. And it's funny because I don't ever use that language because I don't have that way of relating to myself as a fixed identity. So there's no way for
Mm-hmm.
me to really say, like, oh, well, that's really like a me thing. Maybe I've said it, you know, in passing, but I hear my friends say this language often. She's so grounded in her identity. And so for me, just knowing like it's okay, and actually it can be really quite a gift to have this sort of fluid sense of identity or
Yeah.
fluid sense of direction was really helpful for me. Yeah. And then knowing knowing about my undefined ego center and And I had this nice experience of being one of the ways that an undefined ego center was described to me was like you can sort of find desire outside of you. Like you might not know what you want, but then you might look around and see something and be like, oh, that's what it is that I want, as opposed to like a defined ego center. So you and I share the undefined G, but we actually have
Hmm.
you have a defined ego and I don't. And the way that it was sort of described by this person was like, you can sort of look around the universe and like add to cart, the things that you like, the things that you see with that undefined ego center. And that was such a helpful description for me. And it was one of those things where I felt bad that I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know who I was, right? I didn't
Yeah.
have those like strong, consistent from within ego desires. And I didn't have that strong, consistent, fixed sense of self and direction. And it was like, oh, there's actually a reason for that. And here's how you can actually work with it. And I feel like to this day, I have really come a very long way with deconditioning the undefined G, undefined ego. I wish I could force myself to do stuff a little bit more. I wish I had a little bit more discipline. Sometimes that feels a little bit more challenging to accept, but at least I have the language to describe it. So yeah, those were the really helpful bumpers for me in human design. I have some gene keys moments too and astrology moments too. It's just helpful to know who you're not, to be like, oh, I can
Yeah.
just let this go of what I wish that I was. But yeah, what are some of those examples for you? What have been some of your really kind of game changing contrast moments?
One of the big ones that come to mind that I still do struggle with at times is with hope motivation. So, with
Yeah.
motivations, there's 6 different motivations, right? And this is one of these areas where you have a motivation and then you have like your opposite, your transferred motivation. And so you have one built in that is not the correct one for you, but you will experience from time to time.
Yeah.
And so the opposite of hope is guilt, which it doesn't mean I'm motivated by guilt, but guilt is more about problem solving. And so, again, going back to the cosmic order of things, like each of these motivations all play a role. And if everyone stayed in their lane and played their role, things would work out really well, right? At least that's
Yeah.
something that I believe. And
Me
but
too.
it's tricky because we're conditioned by the opposite. So hope motivation, it's like you're here to bring hope to people, right? To inspire people to be motivated in that way as well. Whereas guilt motivation people, they're problem solvers. So it's like they're here to find problems, to solve problems. Not every problem is there to solve, but they are some of the problem solvers of the world for sure. And I am not, but I have this idea that like it should be me, that it's like that
Yeah.
if I'm not doing that, then like I'm being wrong or I'm being bad or I'm being selfish or I'm like, all of these things. But then I believe in the alignment of it all and I see how it works for me when I'm not trying to save people and when I am aligned with that. And, one of my favorite stories, this isn't exactly about hope motivation, but to me, it's a representation of it, of my grandfather when he fought in World War II. He
I love this
was.
story. This is my one of my favorite things ever. Yes, please tell
Yeah,
it.
this is my Irish grandfather when he fought in World War II. He initially was there training people and, almost got himself killed from a grenade and this, that, and the other. I don't quite remember what his exact position was that he went over as, but like he was higher up in the sense that he was the one training people, but like should have been in very risky situations. And then they discovered that he could play hockey. And the troops, even during war, need to be entertained. And so they pulled him from the front lines, from the training grounds to go and play hockey. And he played hockey for the majority of the war because, again, everybody needs a break from war. They can't just be keeping their sanity all day, every day without any relief. So they need people to bring relief. They need people to connect with hope, right? And one of the ways they did that was through entertainment. And so, not to say that his role was more important than someone fighting on the front lines, but that all are needed, right?
It was of equal importance. Also,
Yeah.
insert heated rivalry joke here. We are in the midst of the heated rivalry psychosis, and we are back full circle again to using hockey to be entertained. Everyone who hasn't watched heated rivalry, you gotta watch it. Love it. Yeah, it's of equal importance. I think that's the way that I would describe it. Like it's like we, in
Yeah.
terms of like the puzzle pieces and the cosmic order of it all. It's like again, yeah, it's not more important than those who are on the front lines. But why can those people be on the front lines? It's because they're getting nourished in this other way. Like everyone
Yeah.
has a part to play.
That it's more like sustainable that way. And, from my perspective now, I might think like, oh, well, this isn't as important of a role, but it's still a role that needs to be played. And even
Absolutely.
if maybe no one's getting medals for playing hockey during the war, maybe they're not the most like honored people, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a role to play, even if it's not the role that you think should be played at that time. Right. And
Yeah.
again, that comes back to our alignment of like what feels aligned for us. And I don't mean that in a way of like, I don't know, shirking responsibility or something, but just that like everyone can play a role that is aligned. And I going back to what we talked about so much in episode one, that I believe in these uncertain times, in these unprecedented times, as we evolve, we each have a role to play in the collective evolution. And like we talked about last episode as well, that like I believe that this is a system that chooses people. And as you said too, like you think that human design chooses people. And so
Yeah.
if you're someone that's been chosen, like there's something here, and everything chooses everything. It's not like this is so special or so magical, but although I do think it is, but
I was like, wait,
but
I think it is.
but I just mean that everything is in
Yeah,
that sense, right?
totally.
Like being a hockey player chooses you, being an actor chooses you. Like I think everything can in a way.
Yeah.
But just that if this is the case, if this is something that's calling to you, you are likely here to unlock the gifts in other people, and you have something to be unlocked within yourself. Like any calling, it's calling you to open up. It's calling you to unlock some aspect of your genius that is going to help you play the role that you're needed to play in our collective evolution. And I think what it does mean is that that is going to feel good. That is going to feel aligned, because it's like this
Yes.
is part of what was designed, right? And so it's not like, oh, I have to like give up my freedom and participate in human design and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you get to be in alignment and participate in this experiment that is likely going to feel incredible for you. And if it doesn't, toss it, fuck it, go
Yeah,
find something
sure.
that does feel incredible to you. Even though I'm a human design teacher, I don't care about human design in the sense that I care about people. You know, I care
Yeah,
about
right.
you living in a way that feels good. And I think that human design is a great way to get there for a lot of people. And for some people, it's not going to resonate. And if you're one of those people, then like with all the love in the world, go find what does resonate with you, because I
Yeah.
want you to have that experience.
And you said earlier, like this sort of false idea of like, I have to give up my freedom to get into human design. And obviously, you talked about how aligned it can feel. I actually think to add to that, it's not just aligned, it feels freeing. And that's the whole point of
Yeah.
this episode is like, it's really freeing to not be who you're not, to give up this
Yeah.
idea of like this
Oh, that
conditioned
gives me
self,
goosebumps.
that not self. Yeah, it's literally freeing. I love that you mentioned motivation because that's also something that I love to talk about as a transitional profile with having innocence motivation. And whenever I find another transitional profile, I'm like, you need to know about this. But to talk about this point of freeing, I'll just give a Gene Keys example. And then I'm excited for you to share all this. Like, this is a really value packed episode. Katie's going to share some really great stuff about centers here in a second. But to talk about this feeling of freedom in the Gene Keys, there's a placement called the sphere of vocation. And there are 6 lines of vocation, there's 6 different roles. And the first one is the creator. And these are the people that create brand new things. These are the Richard Rudds of the world that channel the Gene Keys and things like that. And I used to put this pressure on myself of like, I need to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and like start an app or whatever. Not that I want to be like Mark Zuckerberg nowadays, but back in the day when, I really idealized these people that had these like crazy groundbreaking ideas. And I felt so much pressure because of this conditioning, because of, we idolize these people, right? I idolize them because we idolize them as a society. And
Mhm.
it was so freeing to be like, I don't have to do that. I'm not a line one vocation. I'm not here to like create something brand new. And in the same sense of human design, it's like I can give up this idea of feeling like I need to know who I am every second of every day and like have
Mhm.
this fixed sense of self. It is entirely freeing. It's like putting down a weight. It is like shedding this identity that you're not and actually letting yourself shine through. So, yeah, I would argue that not being who you're not is like the ultimate sense of freedom.
Yeah, yeah. And I think of like how exhausting it used to be when I worked in a corporate job, like in the hotel world and sales. And it was just like every day going to this place and like, I have to pretend to care about this stuff. And like it's
Yeah.
exhausting and you feel trapped, but it just feels like, well, that's just what life is. That's just how it works. Like, suck it up. But like, what if you didn't have to suck it up? You
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what if
What
you
if?
actually got to use your gifts in a way that felt good, in a way that felt aligned, in a way that feels meaningful, in a way that feels freeing, and
Yeah.
that you also get to help other people do that? Because
Yeah.
again, when you are free, you model that for others, right? And you give permission to others and you give them the contrast of being a different way. And yeah, I just think it has such a
Yeah.
beautiful potential. Yeah.
It really does. It's like the ultimate trust exercise, trusting that you are fitting, you're playing your role and trusting that everyone else is playing their role and trusting like the cosmic order of it all. Yeah, it's wonderful. You have some really amazing things to share around centers and how they can be these helpful bumpers, amongst many other things everyone needs to learn from Katie in general about human design. But for the purposes of this episode, I know you have some
Yeah.
really good tips for us. Do you want to get into how centers can be this really powerful contrast for us?
Yeah. And so I want to talk about an aspect of the centers called the not self theme. And if you're not aware what the centers are, they are the shapes of your body graph. So this is why I wanted you to have a copy of your body graph. So if you don't, go to the link in the comments so that you can find your body graph, because you're going to want a visual. We're going to have a cheat sheet for you that will have the visuals as well as some of the notes here for you to refer back to, because this is going to be a little bit more teaching heavy. So just sort of absorb it for the time being, and then you can use a cheat sheet to refer back and to kind of ask yourself the questions that we're going to go through here. I taught part of this a couple of years ago in a class around using human design to find your aligned goals. And again, this is kind of the checks that you can go through to see, like, are these not aligned? Because I think sometimes we
Yeah.
create these goals that sound really good because you're either going to have a center that's colored in or it's going to be white. Okay. And where we have the colored in, that's what we're going to call defined. And then the white ones are going to say undefined or open. There's a difference, but we don't need to get into it right now. So with the centers, the not self theme can often be quite motivating because the world around us conditions us quite heavily. And like I said before, when I was first looking into the not self theme, I was like, oh, this is boring. Who cares about this? Only to then realize, like, oh, actually, this is pretty important. So I'm going to go through this quite simply, but I think it will be impactful if you go through and reflect on your goals this way. So I'm going to share a little bit about this theme. I'm not going to get into the center too much and give you an example just so you can perhaps reflect a little bit in your own life. So starting at the top of your body graph and the head with the head center or the crown, the not self theme here is thinking about things that don't matter. And often this shows up as things that are not yours. So you get distracted by other people's problems and you end up creating goals that are there to like solve things for other people, basically, that are not aligned for you. So you're thinking about things that don't matter in the sense that they are not yours. It's not your strategy and authority telling you to do this. You're picking this up from someone else. And so this could look like, for example, when I was married, one of the big goals that I had was to build a business and to like make money in my business so that my husband didn't have to stress out about money. It wasn't for me. It was like I was trying to fix his problem of not having the money that we wanted to have so that like then things would be better. Because it's like if he was happier, then I would be happier, right? If I could fix this problem for him, then that would be good. And the goal in and of itself may have been aligned for me at the time to build a business, but the motivation is incorrect of like, I'm going to do this to fix his problem. That's just not going to work. And there's going to be a million problems or a million more problems where those came from, right? When you're doing things that aren't aligned with you, there are endless problems in this world. And if you feel aligned and called and like you're the one to work on these problems, beautiful. But if you're just trying to fix something for someone else, that's probably not going to work out so well for you.
So good.
So then the second center, we have the Ajna or the mind. And this has a not self theme of pretending to be certain or having pressure to be certain. And this was something, yes, we both have this. So this is something that I struggled with earlier in human design because it's like, I don't know, maybe this isn't it. Maybe this doesn't make sense. Maybe not everyone else is going to get it. Maybe this is, blah, 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 all the words of fear insert here. And so one of the ways that this could look like is like, oh, this year I'm going to get a certification. I'm going to learn this thing. I'm going to do whatever so that I don't have to feel uncertain, so that I can finally prove my certainty. Like maybe you're studying astrology and you're like, well, when I finally learn locational astrology, then I'll be able to prove that I'm certain. When I finally learn birth time rectification, then I'll be able to show people that I'm certain, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of those desires to learn more. But if you're doing it to try to prove that finally when I get this, then I will have certainty. When I get this certification, then I'll have certainty. When I get this degree, then I'll have certainty. It's not going to work. So if they are legitimate desires and aligned for you and your design, again, have at it. Take as many courses and certifications as you want, as long as they're coming from a place of alignment and not from a place of like, I need to prove to someone else that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing this whole theme is, as we keep talking about, is like, it's not what you do, it's the energy with which you do it. So as you're hearing this, like if you hear Katie say any examples that you're like, wait, I want that. Again, it's not about what you're doing. It's the motivation behind it. It's the energy behind it. It's the energy with which you are doing it.
Yes. And with that, let's move on to the throat center.
Let's do
And
it.
this has a not self theme of trying to attract attention essentially in a way that's inappropriate or feeling invisible and not liking the feeling of being invisible, right? So the question kind of becomes like, am I doing this just to attract attention? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be seen. Okay. Being seen is a human need. We need to be seen, especially like as children, as babies. If we were not seen, we were not taken care of. So no shame for wanting to be seen as someone who grew up with like, stop showing off, you know?
Yeah.
If you also had some of that conditioning, then there's nothing wrong with wanting to be seen. Okay.
Yeah.
However, doing things like, okay, this year I'm going to run a marathon because this guy I like runs marathons. Not that I've done this before.
I was
If
like,
you're
does
wondering
someone know about
why,
this?
I know. Like I can't run anymore because I pinched a nerve in my back from training for a marathon incorrectly because I wanted to impress a guy. Yeah, see, and I don't even have an open throat center, and I still managed to get this wrong. So anything's possible, guys.
I love it.
But my point being is like, if you legitimately want to do something, cool. But if you're doing it because you're like, oh, this is going to get the attention of the person I like, this is going to get the attention of my parents. Finally, they're going to recognize me. Finally, my boss is going to see me. Finally, this person's going to see me. Like,
Right.
maybe not. Like, again, it's
Right.
such an energetic thing that if their energy just doesn't connect with yours, you could be doing the craziest thing in the world and they are not going to see you. They are not going to recognize you. It probably not in a good way, anyways, if you're even on their radar at all. And it's like, that's not a you problem. That is just not alignment. And so
Yep.
it's like, take it as this just isn't aligned, and you will find someone who sees you, who values you, who recognizes you, who does all of these things. That's going to feel really good. And again, having a goal of getting more eyeballs on your work, like attracting attention, is not necessarily a bad thing. But it's like this idea that it's going to fix all your problems. That, like, if I can just attract more attention, like I'll do this and get attention, I'll do this and get attention. No, do the thing you want to do because you want to do the thing, not because, like, that's manipulative, right? To
Yeah.
be like, if I do this, then like this little sneaky plot thing. Like, no, just live your life in alignment, and that will attract the people that are correct for you.
Yes. Love it.
So then we move down to the G center, or the identity center, which again, we both have undefined. And the not self theme here is sort of twofold. So it is doing things to be lovable or doing things to prove direction. So either way it can go. And so, for example, in business, one of the things I see a lot is like, you have to choose a niche. Like, you have to niche down. You have to niche down, you
Mm,
know, like you have to be so specific. You have to know your direction. Another way that this can look like is, let's say, when someone is going to university, it's like having pressure to declare a major immediately instead of taking some sort of more open course, because maybe a parent is pressuring you, or maybe you feel pressured from society that you should know your direction and you should be going in a certain way when you don't. And that's okay. Like, the path will be revealed, but the path might not be as clear as someone who has been designed with a clear path. You know, it's different
totally.
experiences. Another example, which perhaps this is where my throat example came from, is doing things to be lovable or for people to love you, to be worthy of love, like these kinds of ideas. So another example could fit was my marathon example. It's like, I wanted this guy to like me. So if I
Yeah.
start running marathons, like he runs marathons, then maybe he'll like me, you know? It's that kind of idea. But it can happen in so many ways. Like, we can do it for our families of like, oh, you know, my dad's dad was a doctor and my dad's a doctor, so I have to be a doctor if I want to be loved in my family, right?
Yeah.
Where we do these things to be lovable. And again, listen, there's nothing wrong with taking interest in your partner's interest because, oh, like I care about them and I love them and I want to support them, or I want to understand this with them so we can both enjoy this more. That's different than I'm doing this thing so I can get love, right?
Yeah, totally. I feel like too, another theme I'm hearing is like these agendas behind things.
Yeah.
Like I think part of what is, maybe this is just my innocence motivation coming through, but also this is a teaching I think that is prevalent in human design and gene keys, is like, you being yourself typically is just for that reason. It's just because that's
Mhm.
who you are, not because there's some extra agenda. And so as an example, like I I talk about this often when I denounced the Catholic Church at 14 and then I was like, and I'm also a vegetarian. I remember being told by my parents, one specifically, that I was doing that to be different than the family. I was
Mm,
not eating meat so that I could be different and I could like, stick it to them or whatever. And I was like, this is just me being me. I just genuinely was handed a PETA flyer at a fucking concert at 14 and I was horrified to see baby chicks being ground up en masse. And I was like, I don't want to contribute to that. And it really is this experience, like being in alignment truly is an experience of like, there isn't an agenda other than maybe the agenda is just alignment. It's just because it feels good and
yeah,
feels true to me, but really there is no agenda. It's never so that, all these examples that you're
exactly.
saying, there's always a so that I'm going to do this so that this. Really what it should feel like is like, I'm going to do this because it feels right, because it feels correct, because I want to, like just
Yeah,
that there's just no extra agenda on it. I have so many G center examples of like
yeah,
doing things to feel loved. And there's always that so that I get X, Y,
yeah.
and Z in return.
Yeah. And again, it's not to say that you're not going to get benefits from some of these goals, right?
Sure.
Like if you have a business goal, like I sure hope you're making a ton of money in your business, right?
Right.
Like whatever your goals are, it's not that they can't have positive outcomes. Of course, that's the ideal. But to your point, it's the agenda that's a little bit different. And
Yeah.
that is really what these mistaken motivations of the centers are that will pull you off track. And
Yeah.
so when you're making your goals, when you're thinking of the things that you want to do, I haven't even thought of my goals yet for the year. I'm not touching those yet, maybe in February.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking of them, allow yourself to write out so that, because so that what? Like, I want to do this so that I feel good, like to see if there's a hidden agenda that you haven't been aware of before, because oftentimes there are. So it's just allowing yourself to
Yeah.
kind of fully complete that thought and see what else is there. And you might be surprised because, again, these are sneaky and these are powerful, and it's
Yes.
easy for them to weasel their way into our life. And then all of a sudden, we spent a decade working towards a goal that we actually don't care about. And I don't want that for
Literally.
anyone, you know?
Literally. I couldn't agree more. And I just want to point out one last thing before you get back into talking about the centers. To your point, there could be benefits from these, agenda driven motivations. But the word that you were describing that I want to just hammer home is that there's a cost. Like you said, it
Yeah.
will pull
Yeah.
you out of alignment. You will get benefits, but there is a cost. When we say the words like energetic alignment, it can sound really pithy and sort of like, well, okay, all right, cool. What does that mean? But there are costs to not being in alignment with who you're meant to be, with strategy and
Yeah,
authority. And
your
in this case,
life,
like,
your happiness, your
right, yeah,
like
your
literally the
health,
cost is your future. It is though.
literally,
Yeah, your health,
literally.
your having a partner, having friends that you love, living in
Yeah,
a place you love, making money in a way that feels aligned. Like these are,
totally.
yeah, to your point, like I know sometimes we talk about alignment, but it's like this isn't some like
Yeah,
airy fairy woo woo. It's like this is your life. This
literally.
is these are the days of your lives, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, but they are. This is how you're living
Yeah.
your life, like day by day, decision by decision, goal by goal. Like this is your life. So are you living it in a way that's aligned, that's going to feel good, or in a way that you're trying to prove to someone else that you're worth something? Like
Yeah.
it's not going to be good.
Yeah. We want the former for you guys.
Yes,
But yes, tell us,
absolutely.
keep taking us through the center journey.
Okay, so speaking of proving to other people, the next center we're going to look at is the heart or the will or the ego, whatever you want to call it. And the not self theme here is really proving your value, improving your worthiness. And
Mhm.
this is something I see so often with people. This center also only has four gates. Next to the head center, this is the one that's most likely to be undefined on people, just because there's not a lot of potentials for it to be activated.
Right.
And yeah, this idea of like, if I do this, then I'll be worthy. If I do this, then I'm worthy of money. If I do this, then I'm worthy of blah, blah, blah. If I work hard, then I'm worthy of a paycheck, right?
Mhm.
And we are certainly in a time that glorifies that to the detriment of everybody's
Yeah,
mental and physical health, you know, that you
totally.
have to do something to be worthy. And so, again, looking at these things of like forcing yourself to work super hard so that you get a promotion because then you'll be worthy. Weight loss goals, because if I get skinny enough, then I'll be worthy. Like any of these things, right? But it's like, are you doing this to be worthy, to
Yeah.
appear worthy, to feel like you are a worthy human? Or are you doing these things because you feel genuinely aligned, excited, interested, all of that? Because again, none of these, like losing weight, if it's healthy, that's not a bad thing. Getting a promotion, great thing, but not if you're doing it because that's the only way you believe that you're worthy. You are worthy. We all are, period, end of story, inherently. And I
Yeah.
know that it doesn't always feel that way. But again, looking at these goals of like, are you doing these things to love yourself, to enjoy yourself, to be yourself, or are you doing these things to show that you're worthy to someone else?
Yeah, to prove. I feel like proving is a word for me
Prove.
that shows up so
Yes.
much with the ego center, to prove worth. And yeah, to
Yeah.
use one of our favorite person's affirmations, you are worthy because you are. That's it. You
Yes.
are worthy because you are. I like to imagine as an undefined ego center telling someone else that they're not worthy of the things in terms of the things that I feel unworthy around.
Yeah.
Would I ever tell a friend, like, you need to work hard to prove that you're worthy, or you need to lose more weight in order to be worthy of love? I would never tell anybody that because I don't genuinely believe that about humanity. But
Exactly.
I have no problem telling myself that. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love to use that. If you have an undefined ego center, imagine you saying that to your friends, the things that that you
Yeah.
say to yourself. Yeah. But yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the next center I want to talk about is the emotional solar plexus. And the not self theme here is avoiding confrontation. So, an example from my life, again, this is not like I have this defined, but I also avoided confrontation a lot. And so, another example was that I thought I wanted to make money in my business so that I could hide this secret credit card debt I had from my husband at the time. And it's like I could avoid confrontation. Like, if I could make money in my business, then I could avoid the confrontation that was inevitably going to happen around this debt that he didn't know about at the time. Right. And so it's like, if I could just make money in my business, and like, that's not a very aligned place. And it's like,
Yeah.
again, if I was just like I was so out of alignment then, wow. But if I had been motivated correctly, if I had been in some sort of alignment somewhere, which I wasn't, perhaps at that time making money in a business would have been possible for me. But it was not for a very long time. Like, I really needed to get back into integrity with myself before any of this stuff lined up. But that's a story for a different day. But yeah, using career goals, relationship things, like there's a lot of things that we do to avoid confrontation when the answer could just be having the uncomfortable conversation, you know? And
Yeah.
so again, having a look to see, are any of your goals here to avoid something where it's like, oh, if I
Mhm.
just do this, then I won't have to deal with that, because that's a big one for the undefined emotional solar plexus, is avoiding truth as well as avoiding confrontation. So
Yeah.
again, like not wanting to look at finances where it's like, oh, if I just make enough money, then like I don't have to worry about that. I can just look at it. It's not as scary as you think it is. You're going to be okay. And you're going to be better off knowing what the truth is of something instead of just
Yeah.
avoiding it forever. Right.
And I want to point out that you've shared a couple of examples that could apply to centers that you have defined. And so even if you have
Mhm.
these centers defined, just ask anyway. Ask anyway if there's some sort of agenda. So even as you're hearing stuff and you're like, I don't need to worry about this, my center is defined. Defined centers also get conditioned. It's okay. So you can sort of do a
Yes.
pass through all these centers as you go through them. But yeah, because I have a defined emotional center and I too avoid confrontation because I don't want to feel
Yep.
certain feelings and whatever. So it's still a helpful question to ask. But yes, take us over to the other side of the chart.
Yes. So then with the spleen, the not self theme is holding on to things for too long. And so this is where maybe you have a goal of like doubling down on your business and you're going to go all in on your business when you know that you actually hate it and don't want to be doing it anymore. Or like
Yeah.
you're going to be going even further into some courses you need to do for work so you can get a promotion, even though you wanted to quit like 5 years ago. You know,
Yeah.
it's like these kinds of things. Like you want to leave your partner, but you just commit to some like crazy couples retreat to like rebuild your relationship when you're like, I hate this person. I don't want to be with
Yeah.
them. Like, okay, get out then, instead of just when you know that you've been somewhere for too long. And like, I know it's not that easy. Okay. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
And having the awareness, because then maybe you can put resources somewhere else. If you know,
Hmm.
like, for example, that you want to leave a relationship, but now maybe isn't the time. Okay, let's just not go deeper into it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not where we invest all of our energy and resources right now if we know that this is something that's ending soon or should be ending soon, right? The next center, so back to the center column, is the sacral center. And here we have the theme of not knowing when enough is enough. And we sometimes get this overworking, we think we're lazy. And the reality is that if you have the center undefined or open, you just work differently than the majority. Only 30% of people have this undefined. So we are the odd ones out in this world. And to your point that you made earlier, Maria, all of us can fall prey to this as well. And so when we have this of not knowing when enough is enough, we can really get in the way of enjoying anything because we don't actually make progress on anything because we're trying to do 17 different things. And like this is me to a T, okay? Like I do this all the time. I'm a lot better at it now. I have a lot more
Yeah.
awareness now, but I want to do so many things. I want to have so many experiences. And so it's really hard to limit myself, but I also know I don't get anything done if I try to do 50 different things at once. And so a lot of these will also show up as shoulds. Like I should do this, like I should work harder here, I should do this more in my business, I should do this more with my kids, I should do this more with whatever.
Yeah.
And that might not be the truth, you know? So seeing what actually is aligned instead of just adding way too much on your plate to the point that you don't get anything done. And then lastly, we have the root center, which I also struggle with still at times. And here we have the not self theme of I need to hurry up and get this done because once it's done, I'll be free. You know, we
Yeah.
have this like myth of once I get this done, I'll be free. And for example, for myself, I've been working on the Incarnation Cross library for far longer than I intended to, but life had some, you know, different plans for me over the past couple of years. And even though it's almost finished, I planned on kind of doing this sprint to complete it all in
Hmm.
kind of December and January. And I remember we had this talk of like, this doesn't actually make sense. This doesn't
Yeah.
actually set me up for the year the way that I want to be. And as much as I would love to just be free from this pressure and get it done, I want to get it done well and be able to like give my best to these classes. It's just the juxtaposition classes that are left, not just there's 64 of them, but
Yeah.
they're quite rare. So anyways, they will get done and I'm excited to get them done. And I could see how the like, I'm just going to spend every waking second of the next 2 months getting these done is not in anyone's highest timeline. That was very much my root centered, being like, when you get this done, you'll be free.
Which you would be free, but to what we talked about earlier,
At
but there would
what
be a
cost?
cost.
Yes.
Exactly. Love that. Like there would have been a cost because you have other goals for this year and there's other ways that you wanted to spend your December and January as well. Like you're traveling, there's all these things happening.
Yeah.
There would have been many costs around not just like what you wanted to do with your business, but also like your body and your health, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, you would have been free. You would have received that benefit of like, yay, now I'm done. And then like the rest of everything else is like in shambles. So like, what was the cost of that? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is why I want to bring these questions and I wanted to bring them forward today because these centers are so motivating sometimes in the wrong way, in the way that
Yeah.
they pull us off. And I knew that that was not really what I wanted to be doing with those months. And I knew that that wasn't probably the most aligned way for me to be doing these, but that false sense of freedom that would be there that like, oh, if you just do this, then you'll be free. And to your point, at what cost, right? So there
Yeah.
is a cost for all of these. So like I said, in the cheat sheet, we'll have it all written for you clearly. So you can, it'll be linked below. You can get it there. But I think it's really helpful to look not only at your current goals, but to reflect back on years past of like, I'm sure a lot of you have had this experience because many of us have that when you complete a goal, you are kind of left there like, oh, this didn't
Mm,
feel how I thought it was going to. This didn't
yeah.
feel
That's
like
so good.
the amazing sparkly fireworks that like I thought this was going to feel. And
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily in and of itself mean that it wasn't aligned, but my point by that is that we think we're going to get to a goal and like our problems are going to be solved, everything is going to be fixed, but really by the time we do anything, we already have seven other things that we want to do, right? We don't like that's just
Yeah.
how we operate. We are constantly looking for achievement, we are constantly looking for expansion, we are constantly growing. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
So, given that no singular goal is going to fix us, is going to magically make our life perfect, it is, you know, these cliches that have a purpose of like, it's about the journey. And it really is. And
Yeah.
so, you want to make sure that this journey is something that is enjoyable for you, is sustainable for you. And when you have these, like, so that my marriage won't fall apart, so
Yeah.
that people will think I'm worthy, so that blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty clear indication that you think that that end point is going to be the fireworks, magic, everything in my life is
Hmm.
fixed. When your life is the journey, you
Yeah.
know, there's so few goals that we complete in life and so many days that we spend on track to those goals or off track of those goals, as it may be.
Right.
But are you going to spend that time in a way that's aligned, that's drawing more aligned things to you, that is putting you in an aligned
Mhm.
frequency? Or are you
Mhm.
going to feel shitty? Are you going to feel
Yeah.
misaligned? Are you going to be in a low frequency, a bad frequency, whatever, however you want to look at it? And then
Exhausted.
think that magically you're going to get to this place where things are going to be perfect. It doesn't work
Yeah,
that way.
so true. I have another Andrewism for you, which is there's no there there. We
Yeah.
think there's a there. Once I get there, no,
Yeah.
there's no there. There's no there over there. There isn't that magical place. And most of our days are spent on the journey towards something, working towards something. And yeah, what I keep going back to in terms of the promise of the system is to get back to your most authentic self and like to be the most you that you can be. And that's the way that your days will feel, if you are working in a way that is aligned. And all the other nasty, annoying feelings that Katie mentioned is how it will feel if we're moving. Yeah, we could get things done, but they will have a cost.
So, in terms of the not self, like this is just one example of the not self in human design that I've shared with you with these centers. And so, this is one of the ways where I think it's so helpful to have knowledge of the system, to learn the system, and to see how it's playing out for other people. Like, so the last few minutes, whatever, we've gone through the centers. But before that, we were talking about just understanding the system as a whole, understanding how it plays out for other people, how it plays out for you, and the things that you don't have. Because just like I was talking about the not self things, like all of the gates that you don't have are also good information because it's stuff that you can just let go, especially when you have these stories of I should be like this, I should be like this, I should be like this. Like, okay, well, if you don't have that energy, which we're going to talk next episode about the nuance of things a little bit more, but
Sure.
if you don't have something, you can also just be at peace with the fact that you
Yeah.
don't have that like that's not in your path and that's
Yeah.
okay. And if it's something that feels, I think, so important to you genuinely, there's probably a way for it to work out. But otherwise, I think there's just so much permission there to let go of the ideas you have of how you should be and to allow yourself to be. And I think that's one of the gifts that I've gotten so much from learning the whole system, from working with the whole system, from doing readings for so many people, from talking to so many people about their
Yeah,
designs.
man.
And like the example you shared about, like, oh, I should be starting things. Like we have these ideas just of how people should
Yeah.
be. And then to just like, I'm a manifester. So the signature for manifestors is peace. But like the peace it brings me
Yeah.
to not have to be that way is wonderful, truly.
Yeah. And another part of this, in terms of why it's so helpful to know who you're not and why it's so helpful to study the whole system, is that it's all working in concert together. And
Mm-hmm.
even like an example, this is like a technical example that I'll give, but each of the channels, for example, is related to a type. So we have like projected channels. These are the channels that
Right.
projectors would have, or generated channels. The way to know what type a channel is you ask yourself the question, if only that channel was defined, what human design type would that create? And so for me, it's like I have a couple projected channels. And so it's helpful for me to know that I'm not a projector and I'm not meant to use that strategy. And the fact that I know what a projector is gives me a little bit more insight into the way that these channels operate for me and how they might actually show
Mm-hmm.
up in my life. And all of it's working in concert together. Like I was saying, there is this cosmic order that we keep harping on. And I can certainly say that for me, knowing how the whole picture works together, and I'm not saying that I know how the world works, I'm just saying I know the human design system, and I know the foundational theory of how it all works together, that allows my application of my own theory to be that much more precise because I
Mm-hmm.
have the knowledge of like, this is what it not should feel like in a negative way, in a positive way of like, this is what having a manifesting generator response should feel like. Lots of different examples of what it should feel like or what it could feel like. It's again, it's not so like there's only one right way of doing it, but because I have this precision around these are the ways that it could feel like or should feel like, and this is the way that it could and should feel like for someone else, it's like, oh, it just helps to make, again, this is how I described when we talked about this in episode 1, like when we discovered our human designs. For me, it just felt like everything like snapped into focus. Everything just got so
Mm-hmm.
much more clear. Before, life was like, why are people like this? And why do things happen this way? And like, what am I supposed to be doing? And when you know that other people are doing their part and you're meant to be doing your part, it's like everything just snaps into focus. It's like, this is the direction I'm meant to go. They're going in this direction. They're acting this
Yeah.
way. Oh man. And it just improves your relationship so much more. We've
I
talked
was
about
gonna
like,
say,
yeah,
like,
right.
don't even get me started on relationships
Yeah.
and relationship
Oh,
charts and connection charts and like family pentas. And it's just like, oh God, being
it
able to see how
transforms
things
everything.
connect and how you connect into things or how you don't connect into things. It's like, oh, yeah, this makes sense. Oh, I can see why in this
Yes.
relationship I struggle with this. And in this relationship, it feels good. And in this relationship, I feel trapped. And in this relationship, I feel, it's just, yeah, it's so
Yeah.
fascinating.
Oh, it's life changing. Like you talked about your entire projector family and like I have like all generators and mani gens except for one. And just to be able to see like that is correct for them and that's awesome. But just because I grew up around them doesn't mean that I need to be doing it that certain type of way. Like
Yeah.
familial conditioning is so strong. And to be able to look at your chart and look at their charts and be like, I'm not like them. And that's why I
Yeah.
won't act this way. Or these are the ways that we are like. And now it makes
Yeah.
sense why these two people in my life are really always asking me about my emotions because they have defined emotional centers and
Yeah.
these three don't. So they're not
Yeah.
really worried about that. Like it's just helpful to have this stuff. And again, my experience of this is it just everything feels so much more precise. Everything feels so much more clear. It's an understanding of like, yeah, it's really a trust exercise of like, I trust my design and I trust the design of everyone else too, because I trust the cosmic order at play here. And
Yeah.
like everyone gets to play their part. Yeah. And for those of you listening that are also curious about doing this as a career, either you're wanting to be a human design reader or you're hoping that it will bolster whatever career path you're on, to use Katie's word of bolstering. It's like it helps you to give way better information to the people that are coming to you and seeking clarity about their lives, to be able to explain to them, like, hey, this is what it feels like for you. And also here's some contrast. Other people won't be like that. This is what it'll feel like. Oh man,
Yeah.
that has been so powerful for my clients. Like I can't even tell you.
Yeah, that's such a good point. The contrast, like that's been one of the things that's been most helpful for me for sure. Because yeah, like especially when things it's like, yeah, that is how I am. But wait, am I just like, is this really it? Am I just trying
Yeah.
to see the thing that I want to see? Does this just apply to everybody? Like, I think for me, it's less like, isn't everybody like that? And it's like, well, is this so vague that everyone feels the same? Like, is that what this is? But then you see
Yeah.
the stuff and you're like, oh no, that's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
much not me. Like that's not me
Right.
at all. So okay, this really is accurate. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Oh, so good. I love that. Amazing. Well, first of all, Katie, thank you so much for walking us through all of the 9 centers and giving us this like amazing audio knowledge. But also for those of you listening, we have the cheat sheet for you. So that is linked in the description below in the show notes. So go and download that cheat sheet. If you haven't gotten your chart, go get your chart as well. That is available for free on Katie's website, linked below as well. And drop in the comments, what you're discovering around maybe some of those center, not self themes that you've found you have been motivated by in the past. And if you're wanting to share, we'd love to hear any stories you have around like things that when it did work out for you, or maybe times that it wasn't so good, or maybe you had a cost or something like that. We would love to hear your stories around this type of stuff. So yeah, we would love to hear your personal stories as you're going through this series and doing this experimentation work, especially at the beginning of the year. If you're watching with us live, like setting yourself up for this year. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about the system,
Yeah, HD School, which is my reader training certification program, it will be opening up again on February 9th. So get on the wait list because we have some really fun bonuses and preferred pricing for people that are on the wait list. So you definitely want to be on there, which again, we'll have links for below. But
yes.
we've had so many incredible students from so many different walks of life. That was something that really shocked me with HD School,
Yeah.
that like I sort of thought it was just going to be people that wanted to do human design readings or were coaches, but
Yeah.
we have like interior designers, like so many different types of coaches, like grief coaches and addiction counselors and interior designers. There's an emergency room doctor, plenty of lawyers, surprisingly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't even think like just parents that are wanting to understand human design better for their own family. And it's just been
Huge.
so fascinating. I know I'm missing out on, yeah, so many of the different types of people we've had, but it's just been
Yeah.
so fascinating to see how they apply it to so many different aspects, to so many different jobs, to like so many different parts of their lives, like beyond what I was able to imagine when I created this years ago. That, yeah, it's been so fun. And I obviously love teaching it. I love sharing it. So if it's something that you're feeling called for, to get on the wait list just so you can learn a little bit more and see if it's aligned for you.
Yay. And you'll definitely want to get on that list because those are where the best bonuses and the best deals and all of that stuff is. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us for our third episode of this series. And definitely hit subscribe if you haven't already to join us for our final episode of this series, where we are going to be talking all about system mastery, and specifically to those of you who are feeling this calling, and especially talking about that feeling of being called and being chosen by the system. And if you're feeling this call, this episode's for you because we're going to be talking about how you're being being called to actually change the future, not just through knowing yourself, which is what we've been harping on so much, knowing who you're not, but also using this knowledge to wake other people up too. And we can't wait. We'll see you next week. Bye.